The captured human sat in the center of a containment sphere, legs crossed, chin resting on one hand, sipping something warm from a too-small metal cup. Around him buzzed the low hum of anti-gravity coils and murmurs in multiple tongues, alien voices shifting from guttural rasp to fluted clicks. No one could quite figure out how he was so calm. Certainly not Kareth Valuin, the high strategist of the Thalaxian Empire. From the observation platform above, Kareth narrowed 3 of his eyes, the 4th fixed on his datapad. His tendrils twitched with irritation. "He's smiling again," he muttered. "Is that not a sign of submission?" asked Lieutenant Vrush, his silicon-jointed adjutant, nervously polishing the scales of his snout. Kareth didn't answer. He had studied humans. Or, rather, tried to. The reports were full of contradictions. Some described them as emotionally unstable mammals with crude tools. Others, rare and buried in classified records, used terms like obsidian calculus and smiles like weapons. The inconsistency irritated him. They had captured a general, hadn't they? A young one. The Terran called Rourke. Down in the containment cell, Callum Rourke held his teacup like it was a sacred relic, pinky slightly raised. He wore a rumpled black uniform with faded Terran sigils and a stripe of silver across one shoulder. He looked like someone who had misplaced his coat at a dinner party, not a prisoner of war. A voice from the cell's audio grid broke the silence. "Is it too much to ask for some honey?" Kareth's eye twitched. "Ignore him." "But he's asking again, strategist." "Let him ask," Kareth growled. "Let him sip his little drink and think he matters. We are the Empire. He is one man." Inside the cell, Callum swirled his tea, watching the shimmering containment field. "You know, in some cultures, hospitality means offering your guest a biscuit. Maybe even a pillow." The containment field sparked blue in reply. Callum leaned closer to the energy wall. Worth a try. He wasn't tall, nor particularly muscular. Compact, lean, a little too relaxed. A faint scar cut down his right eyebrow, a detail almost missed. It was the kind of scar a man earns by moving first. When Kareth entered the cell deck, his tentacles swayed in practiced rhythm. He did not rush. Rushing was for the undisciplined. Callum looked up. The main act. I was getting worried I'd only get the understudies today. Kareth stared. "You mock your position." No. I respect it entirely. I just think you should consider better lighting. This interrogation suite has all the warmth of a tax office." Kareth pressed a button, and the containment field shimmered down. 2 armed guards took one cautious step forward. Callum remained seated. "Do you understand the situation you're in?" Kareth asked. Callum said, sipping again. "Prisoner. Captured. Likely soon to be paraded as the Terran threat that's finally been neutralized. I imagine a speech is being written already. Something inspiring. Lots of verbs." Kareth advanced. "You are here to end the war, not provide commentary." "Why not both?" Callum stood smoothly, setting the cup down. "Multitasking is one of our better traits. Along with holding grudges." A pulse passed between the guards. Callum saw it. Not fear, yet, but uncertainty. That's all he needed. Doubt was the oxygen of strategy. "I've studied your kind," Kareth said coldly. "You rely on emotion. You crumble under logic." Callum tilted his head. "That sounds like something you read in a file written by someone who no longer breathes." Kareth flared his nostrils, if it could be called that. "You think cleverness will save you? I think cleverness is why you're talking and not dissecting." The silence that followed hung like oil in water. One of the guards adjusted his stance. The other looked at Callum with the sideways gaze of someone reviewing their life decisions. Kareth recovered first. "Your fleet is in retreat. Your colony's fractured. Earth still exists," Callum interrupted softly. "Still watching. Still waiting. But you already know that. Otherwise, you wouldn't be afraid to probe my mind." Kareth's tendrils stiffened. "Don't worry," Callum continued, walking the inner perimeter of the cell. Others tried. Psychics, empathic siphons, a singing fungus, my personal favorite. One even tried to taste my dreams. He grinned, a flash of teeth. Didn't end well. Kareth shifted posture. This wasn't going according to script. You are trying to imply strength, Kareth said. But you are alone. Callum stopped. Everyone's alone when you're playing chess. The pieces don't talk back. Chess. Callum sighed. You people really should have started with our board games. Kareth stepped forward. We have captured your most dangerous strategist. There is no recovery from this. The Terran Republic will collapse. Callum studied his nails. Maybe. But then again, maybe we wanted you to think that. The room cooled. The lights dimmed without reason. Somewhere in the distance, a comms alert sounded. Kareth ignored it. You are bluffing. You ever play poker? Kareth blinked. Is that another weapon? Callum smiled. It can be. The alien's voice sharpened. What is your purpose here? To listen. To learn. Callum shrugged. And maybe see how long it takes for someone to notice the trap. Kareth's breath faltered. Trap. You ever wonder why your scans didn't detect human ships within the sector? Why the comms are getting jumpy? The lights flickered. The comm alert sounded again, louder this time. Kareth tapped his console, muting it. You're bluffing. You're repeating yourself. Kareth stepped back from the cell. You think we fear you? I don't care if you do. I care if you listen. Callum stepped closer. You captured a smiling man with no weapon, no resistance. But in doing so, you invited 100 unanswered questions. Why didn't he run? Why didn't he resist? Why did he want to be caught? Kareth opened a comm line. Status report. No reply. Status report. He repeated louder. A static crackle. Then a voice. Sir, the outer drones just vanished. Kareth's hands tightened. Callum watched him carefully. Ever hear of the Trojan horse? Kareth stared. Callum tapped the wall. See, once upon a time, we built a fake gift. Left it where the enemy could find it. Inside was everything they never wanted. Kareth turned. Activate neurosuppression. Sedate him. The guards moved. Callum was already seated, sipping tea again. I wouldn't, he said calmly. Kareth's eyes flared. Not unless you like surprises. The door slammed open. A fifth species officer stumbled in, feathers ruffled, face pale. Sir, communications across 3 systems just died. It's a virus. It's human. Callum raised a brow. Well, not me specifically. Kareth surged forward. What is your fleet doing? I'd imagine they're listening. Waiting for me to say the word. He leaned forward, voice lower, heavier. Would you like me to say it, Kareth? You're bluffing. Callum stood slowly. I'm smiling. Kareth hesitated. What do you want? Callum tilted his head. You think this is negotiation? Then why are you here? Callum's smile faded, just slightly. Because you needed to learn something. That the worst kind of enemy is the one who tells stories. Who waits. Who smiles while the world shifts beneath your feet. Another comm alert, a whisper of static. Then music. Earth music. A soft piano, haunting and slow. The guards looked at each other. Where is that coming from? Kareth barked. Callum walked to the edge of the cell. That's my cue. The lights dimmed again. Kareth turned, furious. You will tell us what you've done. Callum raised his empty cup. Only fair. You gave me hospitality, after all. Kareth slammed his fist into the console. You will tell me now. Callum leaned in, his voice barely a whisper. I already did. The cell locked. Not from outside, from within. Kareth shouted commands. The panel sparked, dead. Outside the observation deck, chaos rippled through the ship. Power fluctuations, drone silence, rogue AI chatter. The sensors flashed alerts in Earth Standard Code. All within seconds. Callum turned, settling back into his seat, folding his hands. I told you, Kareth. This isn't a war. It's a story. He smiled again. And I'm the plot twist. Ziller hated mammals. They were unpredictable, fleshy, and always sweating. But the worst ones were humans. And the worst human was currently lounging in the Empire's most secure cell, whistling something called Dixie. The noise crawled up Ziller's spine like electric ants. He slid into the room on digitigrade legs, his obsidian scales catching the red lights above. His forked tongue tasted the air, calm, with a faint trace of protein-based beverage. Tea again. This one drank more tea than the Empire drank fuel. General Callum Rourke, Ziller said, voice dry and mechanical. You and I are going to play a game. Callum didn't look up from his deck of cards, spread out in a lazy fan across the floor. Poker? I hope you brought credits. Or, at least your pride. I hear that's still legal tender on the lax. Ziller ignored the bait. No. A game of truth and consequence. Every falsehood you tell, I change something in your environment. Every truth, I answer a question of yours. Fair. Callum looked mildly impressed. That's new. I expected more shouting, maybe a dissection threat. You guys really are evolving. Ziller crouched. The shouting didn't work. And our top scion spent 3 hours trying to map your thought patterns. When she finished, she forgot her own name. Callum grinned. Humans are good at compartmentalizing. It's how we survive office jobs. Ziller blinked his vertical pupils. First question. What is blue smoke? Callum tapped the cards into a neat stack. An old Earth term. It means something hard to catch, or something that's already burned you before you knew it was fire. Ziller's tongue flicked again. He activated his control pad. The room shifted, slightly colder. Subtle. Enough to notice, not enough to distract. Not good enough, he said. Specificity is currency. Callum placed the cards aside. Blue smoke is the failsafe. A dormant command net seeded through every network system we've ever touched. Communications, logistics, even vending units. Ziller narrowed his eyes. You're claiming Earth installed sleeper code in Galactic tech. I'm not claiming. I'm reminding. The interrogator stared at him, motionless. Then that's a lie. Callum pointed upward. You sure? Because that elevator hasn't worked since I got here. Neither has the coffee dispenser on deck 7. Ziller hesitated. That was classified. Deeply so. He leaned forward. How? Callum shrugged. You installed Earth translators, right? Protocol upgrades. Efficiency patches. We're helpful like that. You're saying. I'm saying, Callum interrupted, you trusted something just because it was polite. Welcome to humanity. Ziller stepped back, claws clicking on the floor. What's the goal? Callum's expression didn't change. Control. That's not war. That's manipulation. Callum smiled. Now you're catching up. Ziller processed this in silence. His species was bred for tactics, engineered to predict. But this wasn't prediction. It was orchestration. Callum stood and began walking in slow circles. See, you lot think in straight lines. Objective, assault, conquer. Humans? We're Messier. We distract, delay, entertain. We hide the knife inside a joke. You volunteered to be captured. Obviously. Ziller's fingers curled. Why? Callum turned. Because you wouldn't believe it if someone told you. You had to see it. Ziller looked toward the observation window. It was mirrored, but he knew there were eyes behind it, Caretha's most likely. Others, too. Watching, listening, and not understanding fast enough. Next question, Ziller said. What are your forces doing? Callum returned to his seat and refilled his tea. Drifting. Where? Wherever your attention isn't. Ziller snarled. Be specific. Callum took a slow sip. Fine. Some are parked in your blind zones, dead sectors, sensor shadows, trash clusters. Others are in gravity wells you thought uninhabitable. That's impossible. We've mapped. Callum raised a hand. Mapped for your species. Not ours. Your tech avoids gravitational chaos. Ours loves it. Ziller stared. Then, that would require ships designed for adaptation. Callum finished for him. Another thing we do well. You know the funny part? Most of our tech was inspired by alien design. Yours, actually. We just took liberties. Ziller sat back on his haunches. So this is revenge. No, Callum said, and for a moment the grin faded. This is a demonstration. Ziller waited. Callum's voice softened. You're not the enemy. You're the warning. The words hung in the air. Even the system seemed to pause, lights dimming ever so slightly. What is the demonstration's goal? Ziller asked, quieter now. Callum looked up. To show the galaxy what happens when you provoke something that doesn't roar. Something that waits. Something that plans. Ziller stood. You expect us to believe humanity is a sleeping beast? Callum finished his tea and set the cup down precisely. Not a beast. That's the mistake. Beasts react. We orchestrate. The door behind Ziller slid open. Kareth entered, eyes blazing. Enough riddles. Callum turned, blinking. Kareth. Lovely of you to join us. Did you bring biscuits? Kareth ignored the joke. You've meddled with our systems. Callum raised his hands. I haven't touched a thing. You did that yourselves. I just asked for tea and a music playlist. Kareth shoved the datapad at Ziller. It displayed a cascading series of errors. Drones shutting down, AI core speaking English, digital graffiti reading. Did you miss me? Ziller read it once, twice, then looked at Callum. That's from a movie, isn't it? Callum asked casually. Earth cinema. We're sentimental like that. Kareth snarled. This is an act of cyber warfare. No, Callum said. This is a magic trick. He snapped his fingers. The light in the chamber changed. Not just dimmed, shifted tone. Warmer, closer to earth tones. Then flickered. Security override, Kareth barked. No response. Callum tapped the floor with his boot. A beat. Like a metronome. 1, 2, 3. Pause. The overhead screens blinked to life. A looping video. Kareth giving a speech. Edited badly. Every time he said honor, it was replaced with snack cake. Ziller choked. Callum watched them both, then leaned back on his elbows. I've been here 6 days. In that time, I've learned your shift rotations, your power grid layout, and that Kareth can't pronounce the word empathy. Kareth's fists clenched. This is terrorism. No, Callum said, again with that maddening calm. This is theater. The video looped again. Kareth's distorted voice declared, we are a snack cake of destiny. Ziller coughed back something between a laugh and a groan. Callum stood. Here's what happens next. You double security. You isolate the virus. You change protocols. But it doesn't matter. Because what you've already lost is trust. In your systems. In your stability. In your reality. Kareth lunged forward. You think this performance makes you powerful? No, Callum said softly. It makes you uncertain. And that's the beginning of defeat. Ziller couldn't argue. Every calculation in his mind was shifting. Equations unraveling. If even half of what Callum claimed was true, he broke protocol. What do you want? Callum turned to him. Expression unreadable. You, Ziller? I want you to remember this moment. The moment your people realized humans don't fight fair. We don't start wars. But once we're in, we finish them with poetry and fire. Kareth growled. You've lost Earth. Your fleet is in retreat. Callum's voice turned colder. Have we? Kareth gestured. Then where are they? The lights flickered again. Outside, alarms began to sound. A distant voice crackled through the comms. Unknown vessels appearing at system edge. Not responding to hails. Moving in triangulated formation. Kareth froze. Callum exhaled. Right on time. The screen changed again, this time to tactical maps. Dots blooming in patterns. Too precise to be accidents. Too fast for improvised response. Ziller's claws gripped the console. They're not attacking. Nope, Callum said. Just circling. Watching. Waiting for my word. Kareth slammed a palm on the controls. Shut him up. But Callum was already retreating to his seat. You don't have to believe me, he said. But the galaxy will. They'll see how the mighty empire captured a harmless human, and in doing so, handed him the keys to its own gates. The alarms grew louder. Callum smiled. It's not checkers, Kareth. It's chess. And you left your king exposed. Kareth lunged again, but Ziller caught his arm. Wait. What? He's not bluffing. Kareth snarled. How can you be sure? Ziller didn't answer. He was watching Callum. Not his words. His eyes. Because he hasn't made a single threat. Callum winked. Kareth stormed out, bellowing orders, summoning fleet intelligence, calling for scans. The door slammed behind him. Ziller remained, tail curling. "Is this your goal?" he asked. Callum's smile softened. "No. This is just the second move." Ziller hesitated. "What's the endgame?" Callum tilted his head. "Redefining what you think humans are." Ziller didn't reply. He turned and left in silence, his thoughts racing. Behind him, the human sat alone in a room built to contain monsters, and whistled a lullaby for an empire about to wake up in chains. 3 hours after the first unknown ships entered the outer Thalaxian perimeter, 27 of the Empire's largest outposts stopped transmitting. Not exploded, not overrun, just silent, as if the void had swallowed them whole. Inside the interrogation suite, Callum Rourke quietly played solitaire. He wasn't smiling now. He looked focused, like an artist nearing the last stroke on a canvas no one else could see. The room was under double lockdown, reinforced by 2 redundant security AI systems and 6 armed guards. The lighting was colder, sterile. Every surface gleamed with tension. Ziller returned, his steps heavier than before. Gone was the calculated predator. In his place stood something wearier, more aware of what it meant to be hunted by something you'd underestimated. "Your people have started mobilizing in 5 sectors," he said flatly. Callum flipped a card. "We always were good at multitasking. 2 Thalaxian colonies have been boarded." Callum looked up. "Casualties?" "None. Your people disabled our weapons and systems. They left food." "Good," Callum said, setting down another card. "We're trying to be polite." Ziller stared. "Why?" Callum leaned back in the chair. "Because you still think this is war. It's not. This is a lesson." Ziller didn't sit this time. His hands remained behind his back. "You're teaching through invasion." Callum raised a brow. "You invaded us first, then called us savages." "That's an exaggeration." "Really?" Callum stood. The Thalaxian ambassador once said humans were barely civilized simians with an aggressive allergy to obedience. I had it embroidered on a pillow. Ziller shifted. "Some believed humanity needed containment." "Containment," Callum repeated softly. "Always the excuse of empires pretending to be frightened while holding the leash." The air in the room shifted. Not physically, emotionally. Even the guards, trained not to react, tensed slightly. Ziller's voice dropped. "Why now?" Callum's expression didn't change. "Because now was the moment you'd grown arrogant enough to ignore us, and fearful enough to notice us. That balance doesn't come often." Ziller hissed. "And so you set a trap." "I set a stage." He stepped forward, slow and deliberate. "You took me. You paraded me as a symbol of victory. But every second I've spent here, I've been observing, measuring, triggering." Ziller crossed his arms. "You knew we were watching." "I hoped." Outside, the alarms had stopped ringing. Now came silence, the kind that made soldiers sweat and diplomats pray. Callum paced to the viewing glass, staring into his own reflection. "You know what the scariest part about humans is, Ziller?" he asked quietly. Ziller didn't answer. "It's not our technology. It's not even our violence. It's our patience." He turned. "We will wait decades, centuries, just when a fight you forgot started." Ziller's jaw tensed. "You think you've already won?" Callum gestured upward. "I think you're already unsure of who controls your ship. Your soldiers. Your future." One of the guards shifted. His visor flickered, just once, then went still. Ziller caught it. So did Callum. "Hello, Lieutenant," Callum said pleasantly. The guard froze. Ziller rounded. "Who is that?" Sorry. That's Lieutenant Vesna, Human Infiltration Specialist. She's been stationed here for 5 weeks." The helmet hissed open, revealing a calm, olive-skinned woman with a faint scar on her cheek and eyes like cut steel. "Good evening," she said politely. "Love what you've done with the paranoia." Ziller snarled and lunged, but the other guards didn't move. Not to stop him. Not to aid him. Callum held up a hand. Stand down, he said. And they did. Ziller turned in horror. How long? Long enough. Callum's tone was crisp now, no warmth. You thought you had us surrounded. But all we needed was one crack in the wall. One invitation. You brought me into the lion's den and forgot to lock the back door. Impossible, Ziller whispered. Unlikely, Vesna corrected. But that's what happens when you mistake theater for truth. You believed the performance. And while you clapped, we rearranged the stage. From her belt, she pulled a small device, flicked it once. The lights dimmed, then flickered. Every screen in the chamber blinked to black. Then came a single phrase in old Thalaxian script. Welcome to the silence. Ziller backed away. What have you done? We've muted your war, Callum said. You see, we're not trying to conquer. We're just making sure you remember what it feels like to be powerless before something you don't understand. You'll spark retaliation, Ziller growled. Callum tilted his head. Retaliation requires confidence. Right now, your fleets are disconnected. Your generals are arguing. Your people are whispering. And your empire doesn't know who to fear more, you or us. Ziller bared his teeth. You speak of peace, but you bring humiliation. Callum stepped forward. We bring a mirror. You don't have to look, but the galaxy will. The door behind them opened again. Kareth entered, slower than usual. His posture was unchanged, but his eyes no longer blazed with certainty. Remove the human, he said. Ziller turned. He already owns this room. I said remove him, Kareth barked. Now. The guards hesitated. Callum sighed. You're still thinking in lines, Kareth. Still moving pawns while I've switched the board. Kareth drew a weapon. Vesna moved before he blinked. One swift twist, a wrist lock, the weapon gone. She held it out to Callum like a tray of hors d'oeuvres. Callum took it, examined it. Elegant. But you forgot the safety. He tossed it aside. Kareth stood, shaking with rage and shame. What do you want? Callum stared at him. I want you to tell the High Command that the Empire is no longer the sole judge of civilization. That there are other species, stronger not in muscle, but in meaning. We don't conquer. We convert. One mistake at a time. Kareth sneered. You'll never hold territory. Callum shrugged. Why would we want to? Territory requires governance. We're artists. We prefer influence. Ziller whispered almost reverently. This wasn't a war. It was a campaign of belief. Callum looked at him. Now you're starting to understand. The room stilled. Then the central console lit up. A hologram appeared. A neutral signal bounced through thousands of quiet satellites. Human-coded, Empire-compatible. It broadcast a single message across every sector. You may have captured a man, but you never held his mind. And now the mind is free. Callum nodded. That's the cue. Vesna touched her earpiece. Commencing withdrawal. Karetha's voice cracked. What? You're not worth the occupation, Callum said kindly. We've made our point. You'll remember us now. You're abandoning the field? No, Callum stepped past him. We're reminding you whose field it really is. Outside, the Empire's fleet watched as the Terran ships, hundreds of them, activated new drives, silent, elegant, and impossible to track. They vanished without a single explosion, leaving behind only disabled systems, confused command structures, and an unshakable memory. Back inside, Ziller turned to Callum one last time. What happens next? Callum smiled. You ask yourself whether you want to understand us, or just survive us. Then he was gone. There was no ceremony to Callum Rourke's departure. No firing squad. No applause. Just the soft hiss of pressure-sealed doors sliding open and the steady rhythm of his boots on the metal deck as he walked the length of the Thalaxian command corridor. The ship no longer resisted him. Doors opened as he approached. Lights brightened, then dimmed politely behind him. Systems gave way without struggle. A polite retreat, like a host realizing far too late that the guest they tried to control now owns the house. Ziller followed, not as a jailer anymore, but as a shadow that didn't yet know if it should run or kneel. Every calculation he had made, every algorithm that once predicted victory, was now dust. What stood before him was not just a human strategist. It was a creature forged by history, sharpened by defeat, and trained by generations of predators who'd learned that claws weren't half as dangerous as curiosity wrapped in manners. Callum stopped before the central bridge doors. Two guards stood at attention, unmoving. They bore the markings of loyalty, but their eyes betrayed something else, uncertainty, the kind that spreads like fire through disciplined ranks. He turned to Ziller. "I hope you've been paying attention." Ziller tilted his head. "To what?" Callum smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "To how an empire begins to crumble. Not with a bang, with a decision. One officer, one doubt." He didn't wait for a response. The bridge doors opened. Kareth stood at the center, arms clasped behind his back, gaze fixed on the tactical display. Around him, officers moved stiffly, like actors unsure of the next scene. The usual noise of command, the clipped orders, rhythmic status updates, was gone. Only silence remained, broken by the steady hum of systems, now partially in Terran control. Callum entered with the casual grace of a man walking into his own kitchen. "You should have let me leave earlier," he said. Kareth turned. His face was drawn tight, not with fear, he was too proud for that, but with the brittle fury of someone who'd finally realized they weren't holding the blade. They were balancing on it. "We will rebuild," Kareth said, voice low. "We will adapt." Callum nodded. "Yes, you will, but not before you acknowledge what just happened." Kareth advanced. "You hacked our systems. You infiltrated our ranks. You manipulated our perceptions." That's the short version. Callum's hands remained at his sides. The long version? We allowed ourselves to be underestimated. We dressed in smiles and politeness. We told jokes. We spilled tea on your floors and asked for biscuits. And while you mocked us, we measured the angles of your warships, the cadence of your commands, the timing of your silences. Kareth bared his teeth. "You think this makes you noble?" Callum stepped forward. "It makes us human." The room darkened, not by power failure, but by design. The displays dimmed, then shifted. The tactical feed vanished, replaced by a single symbol, an open eye, encircled by 13 stars. The Terran emblem. Clean, watchful. Kareth looked around, breathing heavily. "Is this the part where you give your demands?" "There are no demands," Callum replied. "There's only the offer." "What offer?" Callum's eyes locked onto his. "Allegiance." A laugh burst from Kareth's chest, too sharp to be natural. "You want the Empire to kneel to you?" Callum shook his head. "We want the Empire to join us, or be forgotten." Ziller stepped beside them, gaze flitting between both men. "And if we refuse?" Callum's voice dropped. "Then we withdraw. No scorched earth. No dramatic conquest. Just silence. You'll wake up one day and realize your allies have drifted. Your systems are inert. Your borders porous. And your history irrelevant." Kareth scoffed. "You'd leave and trust us not to strike again?" Callum offered a soft laugh. "You think this was the only string we pulled?" "Kareth, there are cultures rising right now, species your empire oppressed, who've been waiting for a sign. We gave it. You are no longer feared. You are studied, cataloged, compared." Ziller turned slowly. "We were the benchmark for centuries. And now," Callum said, stepping closer, "you're the cautionary tale." Kareth stared at the screen, jaw tightening. "This isn't how empires die." Callum tilted his head. "No. This is how they evolve." At that moment, the primary view screen flickered. A dozen smaller ships appeared in perfect formation, Terran signatures, weapons offline. They didn't broadcast threats. They simply hovered, watching, recording. "We could destroy them," one of the bridge officers whispered. Ziller didn't respond. He knew it wasn't true. And even if it were, it wouldn't matter. The real war was over. The battlefields had been emotional, psychological, linguistic, and on every front they'd lost. Callum moved to the command console and typed something in. Kareth lunged to stop him, but paused when he saw the screen. It wasn't a virus. It wasn't a command override. It was a speech, an open transmission, already live. Callum stepped aside, letting the room hear his voice echo across every empire frequency. To those listening, we do not come with shackles. We come with memory. Memory of being underestimated, dismissed, caged. He looked at Kareth as he spoke. To those who rule through fear, remember that silence is not surrender. It is the inhale before the strike. Ziller listened, spellbound. To those seeking alliance, we offer our minds, our history, our mistakes, and our hope. Callum tapped the console. The feed ended. Across the stars, thousands of species saw the human face. Calm, measured, dangerous. Kareth spoke without turning. What are you really? Callum approached him, expression unreadable. We are what happens when predators wear polite suits. When danger comes with a handshake. When the apex hides behind jokes and says, please, before it breaks your world. Kareth turned, fury unraveling into something else. I hate you. Callum smiled. That's a start. The transmission ended. The ships outside pulled away, blinking out like stars swallowed by the night. No explosions. No farewell. Just absence, and the certainty that they could return at will. Ziller stood on the bridge long after Callum and Vesna were gone. He watched the Empire's systems begin to reboot. Slowly, warily, officers murmured behind him, unsure if they were mourning or awakening. In the silence, he whispered to no one. They didn't win a war. They rewrote what war means. Far away, aboard a Terran vessel cloaked in passive scans and shadow drives, Callum removed his jacket, poured himself a drink, and stared at a star map. Status. Vesna asked, settling into the chair across from him. Kareth will hold power for now, but the doubt's in him. He'll tear himself apart trying to explain us. And the others? Callum took a sip. Some will hate us. Some will mimic us. But all of them will remember. That's the point. Vesna nodded. We're not the monsters. No, he said. We're the mirror. She raised a brow. You're getting poetic again. Callum smiled. Can't help it. War's a human habit. But how we end it, that's an art. He leaned back, watching the stars drift by. Somewhere behind him, entire civilizations recalibrated their future. The galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. And that was exactly the plan.